My name is Jack Carter. I'm 36 years old, and I'm a former officer in the U.S. Army who served 2 tours in Iraq. I live in Denver now, trying to balance civilian life with being a single father to my 4-year-old daughter, Emma. She is my world, my anchor, and every decision I make revolves around keeping her safe and giving her a childhood full of love and normalcy. Emma has a laugh that can light up a room, and she has this curious, fearless spirit that keeps me on my toes. My ex-wife, Linda, works long hours in healthcare, saving lives every day, which means I handle most of Emma's day-to-day needs during the week. Despite our separation, we try to co-parent as best as we can, but I've always had to trust my instincts and be vigilant whenever she's with anyone new in her life. Being in the military taught me discipline, patience, and the value of observation, skills that now translate into watching over Emma and ensuring her world is safe. I notice small things most people overlook, from the way someone looks at her to subtle changes in her behavior that might hint at discomfort or unease. Those instincts have saved me from trouble before, and I rely on them daily as I navigate both her safety and the complicated realities of civilian life. I'm not a superhero, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but I take my role as her father seriously. Every moment I spend with Emma, from bedtime stories to morning pancakes, I try to be present and attentive because the little moments matter more than anything else. I want you to understand who I am and what drives me, because this story is about the lengths a father will go to protect his child and the unexpected dangers that sometimes hide in plain sight. Mornings in Denver have a quiet rhythm, the kind that makes you appreciate the small things. I start each day making breakfast for Emma, packing her little lunchbox, and helping her tie her shoes before we head out for the day. The routines are simple, but they give both of us a sense of stability and safety, something I've learned to value more than ever after my military service. After Emma is settled with her activities or at daycare, I move through my own day, checking emails, running errands, and keeping an eye on my surroundings. Denver has its usual mix of calm neighborhoods and bustling streets, and I've grown accustomed to noticing details most people would miss, from unusual cars in the area to unfamiliar faces in the park. My instincts tell me to always be aware, and I've learned to trust them, especially when it comes to Emma's well-being. Linda comes into the picture later in the week, juggling her healthcare shifts, and she now has a new boyfriend, Mark Taylor. Mark is polite, impeccably dressed, and seemingly perfect in every way, but there's something about his ease that makes me uneasy. It's subtle, his gaze lingers a fraction too long, his tone is practiced, and the way he interacts with Emma sometimes feels rehearsed. I can't pinpoint exactly why I feel off, but my military experience has trained me to notice these anomalies. My gut tells me that appearances can be deceiving, and I've learned that a polished exterior can hide intentions you don't want to see. Even during family visits where everything looks normal on the surface, I remain alert, quietly observing, and ready to act if I see any hint of danger. There's warmth in our interactions, and Emma's laughter fills the spaces between my worries, reminding me that despite the unease, life still has these moments of joy. But the tension simmers beneath like a warning I can't ignore, building a sense of anticipation that something is coming, something that will demand every ounce of my attention and skill to protect her. Over the past few weeks, I've paid close attention to how Mark interacts with Emma, and certain things don't sit right with me. He smiles when she's around, but it's the kind of smile that doesn't reach his eyes, and his tone, even when friendly, has a calculated edge. Sometimes he makes little comments that seem harmless at first, like praising her for being special or telling her she's different from other kids, and I can't shake the feeling that those words are meant to manipulate rather than encourage. Emma has started to share small things with me in passing, moments that would seem trivial to anyone else but make my heart tighten. She'll say things like Mark wants to take pictures of her when no one else is around or asks her to play a secret game that she seems uneasy about. Her voice is soft and hesitant, almost afraid to get in trouble, and it's enough to set off every alarm in my military-trained mind. I can't ignore the pattern, the subtle but consistent signs that something is off, and I rely on my instincts to read between the lines. My years in service taught me to trust observation and intuition when seconds matter, and every interaction I witness adds a piece to a puzzle I can't fully see yet. I've learned that predators often hide behind charm and calm, and it's that very calm in Mark that makes me even more vigilant. Even when nothing overtly dangerous happens, the tension builds like static electricity in the air. I notice how Mark positions himself in the room, how his gaze lingers when Emma isn't looking, and how he controls the environment subtly, testing boundaries without crossing obvious lines. I can feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on me, knowing that if I misjudge, it could put Emma at risk, and if I overreact, it could fracture our fragile co-parenting balance. The mix of everyday life and looming anxiety creates a constant undercurrent of unease, a pressure I carry silently but intentionally. I rehearse possible scenarios in my head, planning contingencies, watching for cues, and staying ready to act if something escalates. It's exhausting and relentless, but for Emma, I will notice everything, trust my gut, and be prepared to do whatever is necessary to keep her safe. The phone rang, and when I saw Emma's name flash on the screen, something in my chest tightened. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, trembling with fear, and she said, "Daddy, I need you. Please come now." My heart dropped, and for a split second, the world narrowed to that tiny 4-year-old voice that I knew meant something was very wrong. I grabbed my keys and wallet, leaving everything else behind, and ran to the truck, adrenaline kicking in like I was back in the field. My hands shook slightly as I started the engine, but my mind was focused, cataloging routes, noting intersections, calculating the fastest way to her. Every stoplight and turn became a potential second of delay I could not afford, and I felt the old training rise, keeping me precise even as my pulse raced. Emma stayed on the line, whispering, "Daddy, he's here," and I can't explain, and my stomach knotted tighter. I instructed her calmly to lock her bedroom door and push her toy chest against it, relying on her small but smart hands to create any barrier she could. Meanwhile, I activated voice commands in the truck, calling 911. My voice low but steady as I described the situation, giving the operator names, addresses, and the urgency of the threat without letting panic take over. The streets blurred past as I drove, weaving through traffic at speeds that would normally feel reckless but now felt necessary. Every red light and car merge was a calculation, balancing the need for speed with the safety of others, my military training dictating split-second decisions. My mind ran through scenarios. What if he moved Emma? What if she panicked? What if she tried to escape? Every possibility mapped and countered before it could happen. The call with 911 continued, and I repeated instructions to Emma, my tone calm but firm, keeping her focused and breathing while I closed the distance. I could hear her little gasps and the tremor in her voice, but I also heard the clarity in her words that she understood she needed to stay safe. Every mile brought us closer, but also higher stakes, each second stretching painfully as my focus sharpened, blending fear, anger, and determination into a single driving force. When the neighborhood signs flashed by, I knew I was moments away. My hands gripped the wheel, every muscle ready, every sense heightened, watching for any sign that he might notice me or move unexpectedly. I told Emma, almost in a whisper, "I'm here, baby, just hold on," and in that instant, all the preparation, training, and instinct converged, making me feel like I could anticipate every possible move, because nothing mattered more than getting to her safely. I slammed the door open and stepped inside, scanning each room methodically, every instinct alert and every movement deliberate. The living room was empty, toys scattered across the floor, but then I heard it, a soft whimper from upstairs. I raced up the stairs, heart pounding, and there she was, Emma, sitting on her bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with fear but physically unharmed. She threw herself into my arms the moment I reached her, and I held her tight, feeling the tremor in her small body and the weight of relief wash over me. I whispered that everything was okay, that I was here and she was safe, even as I scanned the doorway and hallway, aware that Mark was still somewhere in the house. Every muscle stayed tense, every sense sharp, because relief didn't mean the danger had passed. It just meant I had her in my arms for now. I set her down gently, keeping a hand on her shoulder, and guided her to a safe corner of the room while I assessed the rest of the house. The tension between fear and relief hung heavy, a delicate balance that only ended when I was certain she could not be harmed. In that moment, the intensity of parental protection met the clarity of my military-trained instincts, and for the first time since her call, I felt a measure of control returning to the situation. As I searched the rest of the house, I noticed a second phone tucked under a cushion, its screen lighting up with notifications from unfamiliar numbers. My gut told me this wasn't just a coincidence, so I grabbed it along with my own phone and played back Emma's trembling call, the voice of my daughter echoing with fear and urgency. I dialed 911 again, explaining the situation clearly, mentioning the second phone, the call, and the immediate concern for Emma's safety, giving officers enough reason to intervene without overstating or exaggerating. Within minutes, police arrived, their presence a mix of reassurance and authority, and I handed over the devices with instructions, emphasizing that Emma was present and that Mark might be involved in suspicious activity. The officers listened carefully as I recounted what Emma had said, my voice steady but urgent, pointing out the phone, the strange calls, and the subtle threats I had observed over time. It was tense, procedural, but realistic, the kind of situation where proper documentation and calm presentation made the difference between action and inaction. I stayed close to Emma, holding her hand and speaking softly, letting her know she was safe while the police assessed the scene. Every detail I had recorded, from the timestamps of her call to the notifications on the second phone, was logged and explained, giving law enforcement the clarity they needed to make decisions. As they took statements and secured the area, I realized the importance of being thorough, methodical, and calm under pressure, knowing that these small actions could protect her and possibly uncover a larger pattern of danger. Even as relief crept in, I remained alert, watching the officers work and monitoring Emma for any sign of distress. My military training made me notice what might be overlooked: the angles of sight lines, potential exits, and any behavior that could hint at further risk. The situation was contained for now, but the evidence I had gathered would guide the next steps, ensuring that Emma stayed safe while giving us a foundation to investigate what had been happening behind closed doors. Back at my loft, I set up my laptop and began combing through Mark's history with the precision of a military operation. Every social media account, public record, and past address was cross-referenced, revealing small anomalies: oddly short employment stints, inconsistencies in his background, and a series of complaints that hinted at manipulation or intimidation. I cataloged each detail meticulously, knowing that patterns often emerge from what seems like nothing at first glance. My team helped track phone numbers and email addresses, and one in particular stood out, linked to accounts in different states and used inconsistently across various profiles. The number suggested there could be a network beyond Mark, a possibility I couldn't ignore, and I treated it as a thread worth following. Each discovery, while small, added weight to my concern, and I began mapping connections with charts and notes, seeing the faint outline of something larger without jumping to conclusions. As I reviewed everything, I relied on military-style analysis: break information into components, verify sources, and connect dots logically before acting. The more I dug, the more I felt that Mark wasn't operating entirely alone, but I stayed grounded, aware that jumping too far ahead could compromise accuracy. For now, the focus remained clear: gather evidence, document patterns, and prepare for the moment when these details could guide us to the next layer of threat. I traced the suspicious number to an office building downtown, a sleek glass tower that screamed corporate legitimacy, but my instincts told me to look closer. Public records showed a shell company registered at that address, with minimal employees and a series of complex corporate layers that suggested someone was hiding behind layers of legal structure. It was subtle, almost invisible to an untrained eye, but the pattern matched the sort of operations I had studied during my military investigations. I began mapping connections between the number, Mark, and the shell company, noting financial filings, mail addresses, and unusual legal documents. Nothing was overtly illegal at this stage, but the indications were enough to make me pause and pay attention, knowing that careful observation often revealed hidden networks. Each detail added a thread, faint but tangible, hinting at a larger system in motion without revealing everything at once. Even as I worked, the tension built because I knew this could escalate quickly. One misstep, one premature assumption, and the trail could vanish. But if I were methodical, I could uncover a structure that extended beyond Mark, a network designed to manipulate and exploit. I kept notes, charts, and screenshots, preparing for the moment when these connections would lead us to the next stage of discovery. I arranged to meet Mark in a neutral location, a quiet parking garage where no one would intrude, and I brought the evidence I had meticulously prepared. I laid out documents, spreadsheets, and a few carefully fabricated leads suggesting the CEO was aware of his activities and that law enforcement was closing in fast. My goal wasn't to threaten, but to create a believable sense of imminent exposure that would push him to reveal what I needed without forcing a confession. Mark's eyes flicked nervously across the table as I spoke calmly, presenting connections between his actions, the shell company, and high-level corporate oversight. He tried to maintain composure, but small cracks appeared: the slight hesitation, the flicker of worry, the rapid calculations in his mind. I kept my questions indirect, guiding him toward the details I needed, and quietly recorded everything, knowing his own words would become the key to understanding the wider network. Under pressure, Mark started revealing more than he intended, almost conversationally, as if he were trying to justify himself to the invisible threat I had constructed. He mentioned names, locations, and codes, thinking he was explaining the situation to protect himself, not realizing that I was documenting every detail. My military training guided me to maintain control of the conversation, reading micro-expressions, monitoring stress signals, and subtly reinforcing the illusion of danger without crossing legal lines. The tension was palpable, a dance of psychological strategy where patience mattered more than aggression. Each revelation from Mark felt like a small victory, a piece of the puzzle falling into place, and I allowed him to speak freely while I confirmed facts silently. By the end of the meeting, I had obtained the critical information I needed: names, connections, and leads pointing toward a much larger and more organized operation than I had initially suspected, all without resorting to threats or coercion. I left the garage with a mix of relief and anticipation, knowing the information I had gathered would be pivotal in the next phase of investigation. The psychological pressure had worked, and Mark had exposed his own network by believing he was acting in self-interest. Every detail was now in my hands, ready to be cross-referenced, verified, and used to build a case that would protect Emma and potentially others caught in this web. Emma was finally safe, settled in a secure location with me, and I could feel some of the tension ease, though never fully. Mark was now under federal investigation, and I had provided authorities with the recordings, notes, and details he had inadvertently revealed during our meeting. It was a relief to know immediate danger was mitigated, but I stayed alert, aware that investigations like this rarely ended cleanly or quickly. I spent hours reviewing the collected evidence, coordinating with law enforcement, and confirming protective measures for Emma and any other potential victims connected to the network. Every call, every document, and every detail had to be logged and verified, ensuring that nothing slipped through the cracks. My military training helped me stay methodical even when my mind raced with worry, balancing relief with vigilance. Even as the immediate threat receded, I knew the fight wasn't over. The network was still being uncovered, and there could be repercussions we couldn't predict. I focused on keeping Emma's routines normal, letting her laugh and play, while quietly managing the ongoing investigation. The weight of responsibility remained heavy, but I felt a measure of control and pride in knowing that her safety was secured and that the first steps toward accountability were already in motion. Emma's laughter filled the air as we walked through Disney World, her eyes wide with wonder and excitement, a far cry from the fear she had known months earlier. She ran from ride to ride, ice cream in hand, completely absorbed in the magic around her, and I watched, feeling a deep sense of relief and joy. Seeing her regain her innocence reminded me why every risk and sleepless night had been worth it. I reflected on the journey we'd endured, the responsibility of protecting her, and the pursuit of justice that extended beyond our little family. The experience had tested my limits, sharpened my instincts, and reinforced the importance of vigilance, but it also highlighted the resilience of a child and the power of love. Each moment of play, each smile, was a small victory, proof that safety and happiness could be reclaimed even after trauma. As the sun set over the park, painting the sky in warm shades, I held Emma close and felt the weight of worry lighten just a little. We had survived, learned, and rebuilt, and I knew that protecting her and nurturing her joy would remain my highest priority. In that moment, surrounded by laughter, lights, and hope, I realized that while the world can be dangerous, love and determination can create a sanctuary where children can grow and thrive. Looking back, I realized the most important lessons are courage, vigilance, and protecting the ones who depend on us. Trust your instincts, act carefully but decisively, and never underestimate the value of family bonds. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more stories, and share this video to help raise awareness about staying alert and keeping children safe.